What's going on, guys? So with us now getting into the full story of Predator vs. Spider-Man, this is the last Marvel Predator vs. miniseries that'll take us into Predator Kills the Marvel Universe, which is dropping in August, and I think it's safe to say, given Benjamin Percy's track record, that it's gonna be a banger. So if by chance you may have missed any of the previous Marvel Predator vs. full stories that I've covered up to this point, I have all of them linked down in the description to get you ready. So with that said, if you're enjoying these videos, be sure to drop a like, subscribe if you're new to the channel, and don't forget to hit that bell up top to get all notifications. Alright, so going into this, right away Benjamin Percy sets the stage for what type of jungle we're stepping into, with it being a blistering hot summer in New York. And I like how this is set up because it says here, summer claimed the city. Sunlight found every reflective surface and forced everyone to look at the world through a mean squint. Garbage cooked on street corners. Subway vents gasped out hot stale air. On sidewalks, on fire escapes, people sweated through their clothes, simmering in their own juices. Ew. The heat made the city cruel, and crime spiked with the thermometer. Robberies, assaults, murders. But this was different. This wasn't a bullet to the head or a knife to the gut. This was something new. Most of the time when there's a killing, it happens fast. This one had some time and care, and even artistry put into it. So yeah, even with the temperature and the crime rate both going through the roof, this takes us to a crime scene that still stands head and shoulders above anything else that's been happening lately, with it being 3 skinned bodies hanging upside down. And as soon as we see this, we're introduced to Detective LaPearl, who's investigating the scene of the crime, along with the guy from forensics who's taking pictures and asking her all kinds of questions, like could it be drug related, stolen cash, or a neighborhood vigilante trying to clean up the block, because this building had been condemned for at least a year at this point. So she tells him he's thinking logically, but she's not about to do that because skinning people just isn't logical. And as far as she can tell, this wasn't a robbery, but something was stolen, with one victim missing a jaw, the other one missing a rib, and the last one missing a finger. So the forensics guy, he's like, what do you think that means? And as he's asking this, the dude looks out the window and he sees the forensics team pulling up. But Detective LaPearl, she answers his question because she tells him, I wish I knew. This Skinner's some kind of sick trophy hunter, but aside from that, with this guy asking a lot of questions and even at one point talking to the neighbors, the detective asked him what's that about, because that's her job. Like, forensics isn't supposed to be out here talking to people and asking questions and all that, so she tells the guy that's my job. But when she turns around, dude's gone. When the actual forensic team steps in, they're like, sorry, we're late, we're stuck in traffic, as usual. And that's when Detective LaPearl's like, wait, if you guys are forensics, then who have I been talking to? And that's where we find out that this fake forensics guy was Spider-Man the whole time, as we see him ditching his disguise and running off like, gotcha. And as soon as he leaves, he calls J. Jonah Jameson as Peter to let him know that he's got something. And it's really a situation where the Bugle's been struggling for a good story, so Jameson wants someone, anyone, to bring him something. So Peter goes on to tell him, and I mean, you know, with his phone webbed to his head, but Peter goes on to tell Jameson that he's got something for him. And Jameson's just like, this better be something, because last time Peter brought him something about a neighborhood puppy parade in Queens, and that's not what the Bugle needs, because Jameson tells him, I don't want good news, I want bad news. I want fear. Fear gets clicks, and clicks get ad revenue. And I mean, speaking of which, if you click that like button for your boy, I greatly appreciate it. And Jameson goes on to tell Peter how urgent this is, because he's like, you think it's hot outside? It's really freaking hot in here. Our feet are in the fire. This paper barely has a budget anymore. You're 5 canceled subscriptions away from losing your job, which is wild. So Peter tells him here, how about mass murder? And right there, Jameson's like, oh, you got photos? You better have photos. So Peter just tells him he'll be there in 5 because traffic's light the way he's coming. But as soon as Peter says that, he sees a robbery in progress, so he tells Jameson to make that 20 minutes. Because of course Peter's got to handle this before he makes his way to the Bugle. And I gotta say, it's funny how these robbers are wearing masks that look like aliens. And I mean, in more of a generic sense, but even still, I think it's a nice touch. But after seeing this, Peter goes after these guys, and he ends up making the decision that I'm sure most of us have made while playing the Insomniac Spider-Man games, where you're chasing down a vehicle and you're like, I'm gonna cut them off on the next block. You know, just to get that triangle to pop up sooner. But when Peter goes to the next block, he sees a group of kids playing around in the open hydrant with the getaway van heading right for them. So Peter quickly webs them all up and yanks the kids to safety, which as a result nearly allows the robbers to get away. But fortunately, these crooks weren't heading too far, so Peter's able to see the van head into a garage. But when we go inside and we see the robbers splitting up their take, one of these guys, who looks to be like the leader of the crew, he tells his guys to close the door, cut the engine, and move quick so they can split the cash, go their separate ways, to where after that, none of them communicate with each other for 2 weeks. But when he asks his guys if they understand, no one responds. And that's when he turns around to see that they're all dead. And I mean, these guys were picked off without a sound. So of course the crew leader draws his gun, but even still he's terrified and he's just like, look, hey, whoever you are, if you want to cut, let's work something out. Let's make a deal. Just before he sees two glowing eyes right over his shoulder. But before he can even react, this guy gets his face ripped off, only to then be impaled by the blade of a Yautja hunter. And I mean, at this point, there's really no question about it. This guy is done for. You can already tell by the blade and the silhouette that this was done by a predator. But I gotta say, in comparison to the other predators that we've seen in Marvel Comics since the Fox acquisition, this predator just might be the creepiest thus far, because it's not out of the norm to see a predator skin their victim and hang them up as a way of warning for the actual game that they're hunting. But there's just something about the way that this predator is just playing with the skin and holding it up in front of his face that just make it seem like he's one of those unconventional hunters who don't exactly go by all the rules of the Yautja, and he just might be a bit more sick and twisted than what we expected. And I mean, at least I hope, because that would be fire. But after Spider-Man drops off the kids, he quickly heads over to the garage where he saw the van pull in, which is still open, so Peter just walks inside. And as soon as he does, he calls Jameson. And you know, Jameson, he's the type, when you call him, he's the first one to talk. So right away, Jameson's yelling at Peter about how he said he would have been there already, but Peter just lets him know what he saw earlier in reference to the mass murder. It wasn't an isolated incident. And that's where he tells Jameson they're dealing with a serial killer, as Peter sees the bodies of all those crooks skinned, chained up, roped up, and all sorts of limbs missing. And so following this, Peter goes back to the Bugle, and we're told here the heat was like a living thing, a predator you had to fight to survive. Every AC unit in the city was cranked to the limit, every fan blasted on high. The grid could only take so much. And meanwhile, over at the Bugle, Jameson's telling Peter that the article isn't terrible, it just needs more dirty panic, something with the you could be next tone to it. And I mean, we're not really told at this point if Peter's been writing for the paper or if he's just being pulled in because of the Bugle's financial state. All we really know is that Jameson's counting on Peter for more than just the pictures. But Peter responds to Jameson's suggestion, telling him, I disagree. I only feel okay about running this because I don't want it to happen to anyone else. I want people to be careful and vigilant, not scared. And right after that, the power goes out, which has Jonah losing it because they're trying to break this story, you know, and get that ad revenue. And right after we see this happen, next we jump over to MJ, who's riding the subway because she has an audition today, as we see her reading what looks to be a script for the play called A Streetcar Named Desire. And unfortunately, this is where she's at when the power goes out. So as you'd expect, a few people on the train are kind of freaking out. But then there's one lady in particular who's really losing it because she's claustrophobic. So for her, this situation's way more intense. And after seeing this, MJ heads over, she introduces herself, and she tries to help this young lady out by shining the light from her phone through the window to show the lady that there's plenty of space outside. So MJ tells her to focus on that. But as they're both looking through the window, they see something moving out there. So at first the assumption's like, oh, they just brought somebody out here to fix the tracks. Cause I mean, that's gotta be somebody with the transit crew. Or at least that's the thought until the predator steps up to the window, giving both of them a brand new phobia, free of charge. And it's wild cause it's set up like your classic jump scare. But following this, we head back over to Peter and Jonah, who are trying to figure out a way to get this article up as soon as possible. But Peter doesn't have a signal, so it's likely a majority of the people in the area who would try to read it online, they don't have a signal either. And it'll likely be days before everyone's back up and running. So Peter's like, you know what? Fire up the generator. And that's when he takes Jonah to the printing press and he tells him since the network's down, they need to go analog and sell papers. Actual papers. And man, this reminds me of when I was in high school, we had like a duplicator press, which is a smaller version of one of these in my graphic arts class. And we had to learn how to run these things. And mind you, when I was in high school, there's no such thing as an iPhone. So yeah, just telling that story makes my knees and my back hurt. But after getting all these papers printed, they hit the street corners and different public areas. And they do it old school, because with no one having anything to click or swipe, the paper will at least offer them something to read in the meantime. Because even still, people are outside trying to stay cool however they can. And aside from that, others are just trying to pass the time. But it's also funny because Jonah's really trying to sell this dark twist along with the story. Because he's out here like, read all about it. The streets are going to be extra dark tonight because there's a serial killer on the loose. And he's charging $10 for the paper. And I mean, I'm not sure if that price is good or bad, but one of these guys is like, man, $10. So Jonah's just like, all right, give me $5. But while he's talking to this guy, someone else walks up and snatches the paper out of Jonah's hand. And come to find out, it's Detective LaPearl. And this is where she takes a look and sees that the photo credit is to Peter Parker. So she shakes down Jonah, telling him to either bring in Peter Parker for questioning or she'll arrest him. which is basically how you would expect this to play out, especially if Peter put his real name on the pictures. Like if there were any time for you to be using a pseudonym for your photography, bro, that was it. But during this time, we follow Peter, who's made his way to go check on MJ, because he knows it's going to be a long night for him, but even still he wanted to stop in and see how her audition went, but there's no reply. And this is where we get a glimpse back down on the subway, where there's a scream and we see the same book or script that MJ was reading for the play titled A Streetcar Named Desire, and it's covered in blood. And back up top, when we go to another employee selling papers from the Bugle, and this is an older guy, but we see him sell a paper for 10 bucks. And when he does, he continues soliciting and waving the paper while saying there's a predator on the loose. Don't be among the hunted. Read all about it. And when he does, a couple guys start eyeing him down like, I wonder how much money he got. So the both of these dudes run up and they try to rob him at gunpoint, only for an arrow to fly in out of nowhere and go right through one of these guys' hands, just before a shadowy figure jumps down from the rooftop in the alley and catches the other mugger with a headshot. Cause this dude ain't playing with these arrows, and as this stranger approaches, he tells the older guy who was selling the papers, you shouldn't be out here. You're not strong enough. This city can be a dangerous place, especially in the dark. And that's where we see that this stranger is Kraven, as he goes on to ask this nice gentleman to continue and tell him more about this predator. So yeah, not only has the predator made his way to Spider-Man's friendly neighborhood, but Kraven's also here too. Alright, so coming back, the first thing we're given is a reminder of the conditions that everyone in New York's dealing with right now, with it saying 8.5 million people live in New York City, and they're all out of power on what's turning out to be the hottest night of the year. Hot as blood, hot as hell, all across the city, utility workers are scrambling to repair the grid, but they don't know, not really, what kind of darkness they're up against. So from here, this immediately follows one of the utility workers who's getting ready to repair this damaged power line, which is still live. And I mean, I'm no expert, but I think he should go to the breaker and cut the power first. But while he's down here, as it turns out, he's right next to the subway cart that we saw MJ and the other young lady trapped in back in issue 1, where at the time, things were not looking good for the two of them, with the Skinner predator just showing up. But right now, the utility worker hears someone crying for help. So of course he goes to check it out because he doesn't know he's in a Predator comic, and his initial thought is that there's just people trapped in the subway, so he goes to help them out. And as soon as he opens the door, there's just a pool of blood inside. And even now, he still hears someone saying, help, help me. So he steps in, only to look up and see bodies hanging everywhere, with no skin, limbs missing, just before he's approached by a saggy-skinned, shadowy figure that turns out to be the Predator, who, like we've seen before in other stories as well as Predator movies, the Predator's just using recorded playback from one of its previous victims, saying help me to lure this guy in. And I gotta say, anytime I see this, it just makes me think, what kind of speakers are these Yautja using? That just sounds so good that they fool people every time. Like, are they using Harman Kardons or something? Some Sennheisers? Because they work every time. But as soon as this guy gets taken out, we see MJ and the other girl take this opportunity to make a run for it out of the next subway cart. And at one point, this girl tells MJ, I don't want to die. And MJ tells her, you won't. I'm not going to let that happen. Which right there's like, okay now, take it easy with the promises. And after this, when we go back over to Peter, who's made his way back to the apartment, and mainly to check on MJ since the city's out of power, and he knows he's going to be out all night. So at this time, he figured MJ would be back from her audition, but no one's home. So when he hears a knock at the door, he's like, oh, that's gotta be MJ. So he goes to answer it with his mask off, while thinking MJ probably forgot her key. But when Peter opens the door, it's Detective LaPearl, who, like we saw, she was already looking for Peter Parker since his name was on the pictures from the Bugle. And these are pictures that Peter was only able to get by posing as a member of the forensics team and illegally taking pictures of her crime scene. So yeah, on one hand, it's bad enough that Peter basically left a trail for Detective LaPearl to find out how he got these pictures. But on top of that, for him to answer the door in his Spider-Man suit with his mask off, it almost seems like he's trying to make her job super easy. So as soon as he sees her, he panics and he shuts the door. And now Detective LaPearl has the suspicion that Peter's guilty of more, and perhaps he's the killer. And this just has Peter like, why would I kill them and then publish an article about it? And the detective is just like, because sickos love attention. And this is one of those things where it's like, you can totally understand where she's coming from, for the most part, because Peter's just set himself up in so many ways here. But with them needing to get back out and save whoever he can, he just tells her that he doesn't have time for this. Only for her to basically tell him, yeah, you got time, you got 5 seconds to open this door. And so of course, Peter's not waiting around for her to kick the door in, so he starts to make his way out. But before he leaves, he lets her know that there's more victims at a second crime scene, which again makes him sound like a killer. But he starts to give her this information so she can go check it out, because of the whole idea of the criminals returning to the crime scene thing. And the last thing he tells her before leaving is that the killer didn't just leave a mess, but they also left a huge pile of cash. to where after that he gives her the specific location of the garage, which is the same location Peter stumbled across in issue 1. So after Peter leaves, the detective really has no other leads aside from checking out this garage, so she makes her way over there to take a look. And after this, there's a moment here where Peter's swinging over New York City where he passes by a huge cloaked predator ship. And there's more that's going on with this that we'll talk about in a little bit. But as he swings by it, I can't help but to think like it would be crazy if he swung right into it, because he passes right by it. But we also get an explanation to what exactly Peter's experiencing, which includes how his spider sense is responding to the whole situation right now. With it saying here there was a killer on the loose, there was a cop after him, MJ was missing, the temperature was in the triple digits, and the power was out. Peter's spider sense made his brain feel like a hot itch, but he couldn't pinpoint any one threat. The whole city felt alive with danger, above and below. So for this Peter, it's much like a lighter version than what we've seen where his spider sense would either go crazy because of Galactus, or in Dark Ages when a Celestial was waking up inside the Earth. Because there's some times where Peter's spider sense will go crazy and have him in excruciating pain, or it'll just be like a constant hum. But nonetheless, as Peter makes his way through the city, he's seen by whoever's on this ship, which again, we'll talk more about that in a little bit. But for Peter to make some kind of sense out of everything that's going on, since he can't just look online, he makes his way to the New York Public Library. And as he does, we're told here he had to trust that MJ could take care of herself and focus on the real heat of the night. Something was out there hunting and collecting skins, fingers, toes, skulls, ears, eyes, anatomical trophies, and it left something behind as well. A calling card, a symbol. The internet might be down, but he knew he could solve this riddle of flesh and blood with paper and ink. So basically, Peter's looking to do some research, since he hasn't seen anything like this before. And while he's here, we head back to the garage, which is also referred to as crime scene number 2, where we find Kraven, who's now made his way here. And for a moment, he makes a confession about how he was bored, but he's not now, because whoever or whatever did this has proved themselves worthy of him. And while Kraven's here, I'm not gonna front, it's kind of impressive. And it's low-key one of my favorite moments in this series so far, because just by looking around, he's able to put together a ton of information about who and what he's up against. And not so much the case of knowing that it's a predator specifically, but as you would expect, Kraven's able to make a very accurate assessment on who this other hunter is and what all has happened in this garage. With one of the first things that he points out is that they didn't take the money. They only cared about flesh, blood, and bone. And with them noticing the victims are skinless, with one missing an eye, the other a finger, right away he's like, this is a trophy hunter. And somewhere they've got a den to place their trophies, which is something that Kraven would see as a real prize, as far as hunting down a trophy hunter. And as Kraven goes back to admiring how these victims were flayed, Kraven says here, to skin a human so quickly and precisely, that's as delicate and difficult a task as folding origami in a rainstorm. You must have such wonderful tools. And it's like, for me, there's something about this combination of Kraven analyzing and admiring a predator that has me kind of feeling like, you know what, I probably would have been upset had we not had this moment go down before things really pop off. But as he continues to look around, Kraven sees the huge bloody footprints. So he's like, I've never seen tracks like yours before. Bipedal, vaguely reptilian, perhaps 8 feet in height. There's just one problem, and that's where Kraven sees some webbing and he's like, oh, Spider-Man has been here. And he's arranged some sort of trap. And now with knowing Spider-Man was here and seeing this trap that he set, these things are going to affect how Kraven approaches this whole situation. But before he's able to take another step, Detective LaPearl shows up. So Kraven gives her a fair warning by telling her it's not wise to point that gun at him, because he has no beef with her. But given the fact that he's standing here in a room full of skinned bodies while wearing all sorts of hunting gear, the detective goes for the arrest. But just when she gets close enough to put the cuffs on him, Kraven grabs her hand and nearly gets his face shot off. Like she quick on the draw like smoke when Cornbread grabbed him. But Kraven does a really smart move here, because when he tosses her off to the side, he throws her right into Spider-Man's trap, while telling her, you are brave but stupid. Brave and stupid will get you killed on a night like this. So here you should stay, while I go hunting. And like I mentioned before, with Kraven seeing Spider-Man's trap, and that affecting his approach for this whole situation. Now that Kraven knows that Spider-Man's also after this mysterious killer, for Kraven it's now more than a hunt, it's a race. And in Peter's case, with him doing a ton of research, he's come across a number of instances throughout history where a bunch of other victims were found the same way. And at this time, Kraven's like, Spider-Man might be ahead of him now, but not for long. And when we go back to MJ, who's trying to sneak away from the predator to get herself and this other girl to safety, they run into this homeless guy who startles them. So just before they get ready to scream, this guy has to cover both of their mouths so they won't bring the predator back their way. And this dude just leans in with his dirty hands still on their mouths. And he's like, you gotta stay quiet or he comes. And this works well enough to get the two of them not to scream. So when he notices that they're calm enough to talk to, he lets go. And that's where MJ asks him, what is that thing? So this guy tells her, I'll show you, but you got to be quick and quiet. And this is where he leads them to what's basically the predator's den. As we're told, all around them are old and young, weak and strong, every gender, every ethnicity. The only thing the victims have in common is that they were dead. This isn't the trophy room of a hunter. It's babbling, slobbering chaos, a collection of cruel madness. So yeah, after seeing this confirms what I figured back in issue 1. As far as this being a predator who's dishonored the Yautja code, which definitely means we're dealing with a bad blood predator, who at oftentimes are considered to be unstable. And so next, when we head back over to Peter, he's now made his way back to the Daily Bugle to show J. Jonah Jameson what he's found. And at first, Jameson's like, what's a pile of old, mold-stinking books have to do with what's happening right now? And this is where Peter tells him what they've been seeing with this mysterious killer. It's been going on for a long time. So Peter tells him here, in times of war, in times of plague, in times of drought, whenever things got hot, dangerously hot. And he holds up some pictures for Jameson to see, while saying, look at this, that's the Ardennes Forest, 1945 Battle of Bulge. Those bodies, they belong to German and US forces. And Jameson's just like, okay, well, what are you saying? So Peter tells him this symbol and this style of killing, they've been going on for hundreds of years, all around the globe. But to Jameson, all of this just sounds like a bunch of conspiracies, so he quickly dismisses it. But when Peter's spider sense goes off and some pigeons are startled by the window, Peter goes to check it out. And even now, Jameson's like, do I need to be worried about you, Parker? You're paranoid about century-old threats and birds. Only for Peter to tell him, you've got to trust me. I've got a sense about certain things. And it's right here where this cloaked predator ship just outside the window reveals itself with 3 predators getting out, with it saying before the power went out, when Peter saved the story about the killings to the Daily Bugle cloud, the photograph of the crime scene triggered an algorithm that had been lying in wait for exactly such a visual signature. A signal went out, and a hunting party followed. They are here for the one who hunts without honor. So now this Yautja serial killer's got some certified predators coming after him, in addition to Kraven and Spider-Man, while MJ's moving closer to the problem instead of away from it. I don't know what she's doing. She wildin'. Alright, so coming back, this picks right up at the Daily Bugle, at the time when Peter noticed that him and Mr. Jameson were not alone. And man, this was a huge twist at the end of issue 2, because now with 3 additional predators arriving, we learned that this group had made their way to New York to hunt down the bad blood Skinner Predator, who we already knew from the beginning this guy was on some other stuff, with the Skinner Predator showing no discretion. Anybody could get it, which was a clear sign that this guy had no code that he was following, which is why the boys are coming after him now. But with Peter being here at the Bugle with Mr. Jameson, he's got to be clever about finding a way to get Jameson out of the way, so he can suit up and handle these guys. But then it's also around this time when the power cuts back on, which is something that Peter uses in a moment here. But after trying to get Mr. Jameson to be quiet, which didn't work because it's Mr. Jameson, Peter then ended up telling them that they need to go. But Peter was smart about it. He used the old carrot on a stick method, because of course Jameson's like, we got work to do, why would we leave? It's a hot story. And that's where Peter was like, exactly, and I need to show you something that could be our next headline, which was enough to get Mr. Jameson to move. And mind you, this whole time the clock is ticking, because these 3 new predators have made their way to the roof, and they're getting ready to swing down into the building in a matter of seconds. So it was crucial that Peter got Mr. Jameson to move, and move quick with all that talking that he's doing, because by the time those 3 predators crash through the window, Peter's already got Mr. Jameson in the elevator, which again, part of that is thanks to the power being back. So by the time they were in the elevator and Jonah heard that loud noise, it just turned into the perfect setup for Peter to send Jameson down the elevator and head towards the commotion while telling Jonah like, oh, I'll go check, be right down. And it just played out as like the perfect setup for Peter to create some space, suit up, and go and find out what he's dealing with. But also what's really interesting here, because we don't get dialogue for the predators, it's really just a whole lot of clicks, just a whole lot of clicking. But as they're looking around the Bugle, one of them ends up finding something and calling the other 2 over, with that something being the information Peter collected on the Skinner Predator. As we're told, this is what the hunting party had come for, a blood trail. They are here for one of their own, the Yautja with no clan or code, the Yautja who disgraces them all, the one the humans call Skinner. He has left his mark across the city, and as soon as one of them pulls this drawing of the mark off the board, a web comes from behind them snatching it, like, excuse me, and Peter asks them, would you all be interested in sitting down for an interview? I have so many questions, but these guys all attack him at once, with shurikens and everything. You already know Peter's coming with the quips, he's just like, great. Once again, the press is under attack. And it's just like, oh man, Peter, focus, because these dudes ain't playing. But following this, we step away for a moment, We head to a rooftop where the service repair workers are working on getting the power back on. And keep in mind, as we're told, this is like the hottest time of the year in New York. So these guys are working hard, sweating bullets, but then an arrow comes flying into this transformer, causing a surge just before it blows up. But come to find out, this was Kraven's doing, with him saying here, "We stay in the dark for now, New York. If news gets out about what's actually happening here, then the Avengers will show up. And I want this hunt all to myself." Which sounds like something Kraven would do without hesitation. You know, just prolong the danger, consequences be damned. And that's exactly how this plays out, because the next thing we're told here is that Kraven knew this would take time and patience, because this predator was not his standard prey. Over the last few days, crime scenes had ranged from a nursing home in Harlem to the tiger habitat at the Bronx Zoo. A grizzly haunts rivers during the salmon runs, and the crocodile sinks below the surface of a watering hole, frequented by gazelle. But for Skinner, there is no such specificity to his taste, making him harder to anticipate. No one is safe. New York is a city of eyes, and windows, and cameras. Kraven knows that if this predator has killed throughout the boroughs and hasn't yet been seen or recorded, then it is traveling and hiding below, not above, like a hungry spider scrambling through the city's basement. Which tells us right there that Kraven knows where to look next as he makes his way into the subway entrance. And after this, when we go back down to MJ, who's made her way to the Skinner's throne room after running into this homeless guy who's like the tour guide down here. But after this guy's led her to the Skinner Predator's throne room, because back when MJ asked what that thing was that was killing everybody, this dude was like, "Oh, let me show you," and he brought her here. But now it's like MJ, she's seen enough and she's ready to get back up to the surface, because she's also trying to help this other girl she found on the subway, and now they're ready to go. But this guy tells her that sometimes it's safer down here than it is up there. So he tells them to keep quiet, and eventually he agrees to show them the way. But as they are heading through the different subtunnels, they hear a voice saying, "Help." And this dude tells them right away, that's him. That's the Skinner. But MJ's like, "But it sounded like a woman." And this dude tells her that's how he tricks you, like a puppet man throwing voices. But then it's here as they're following him, MJ notices that he's leading them through a path that goes down and not up. So she calls him out on it, and she's like, "Well, you told us you were gonna help us get out of here." And he tells her that he will, after they hide, because the Skinner's coming and they gotta lose him first. And I gotta tell you, it's here where he leads them to this room full of rats, and he pushes MJ and this girl into this pool of rats while telling them to stay down as long as they can stand it. And I'll admit, at first I thought this dude was trying to kill them, like he was just sick. But that's not at all the case, because he's basically telling them to do what he would. But of course, when the ladies get pushed into the rat pool, they're screaming at first, but then it gets quiet and all you hear is the rats screeching. And this is how we're shown when the Skinner Predator shows up, that the guy was using this to hide their thermal signature. Because again, after hearing the voice trap, he knew the Skinner Predator wasn't far away. And when the Skinner gets here, only MJ and the girl from the subway were able to hide their thermals in time, leaving their tour guide friend out and exposed, with it basically being the case of him sacrificing himself to save them. But at least now MJ knows how to hide from this guy, and that could be useful information to either Kraven or Peter. But this was the part that had me thinking, I gotta ask you guys, and be honest, if you had to hide under a pool of rats from a predator just to stay alive, could you do it? Because I'm gonna be honest, for me, I probably would have started levitating. But I just want to know what you guys would do, because I just don't know if I would have made it through the ratism. But either way, when we go back to Peter over at the Daily Bugle, we're given a bit of insight here on how these predators thought he was going to be an easy kill. Because we're told here the hunting party might have come for Skinner, but they are not above a little sport. This spider seems like an entertaining diversion, until he isn't. So yeah, they literally thought for a moment here that Spider-Man was going to be a little side quest, only to find out that he's a boss in his own right. And Peter finds out that these guys are packing more than he expected as well, because even though he can clearly see that there are just 3 of them, when they set their targeting on Peter, his spider sense goes crazy like he's fighting a dozen of them at one time. So he's quickly made aware of the fact that these guys got plenty up their sleeve. But after dodging the shoulder cannon blast from one of these guys, Peter yanks off his mask, because he's like, "Hey strangers, since we've never fought before, I'd love to get a face to go with the fishnet stocking bodysuit." But then when Peter sees its face, he's like, "Oh, on second thought, you can have the helmet back, my guy." And I like how Peter says here, usually the bad guys like to make a big speech about why they're making trouble in my neighborhood. But you guys are apparently the strong silent type. Because yeah, for Peter to be someone who talks so much, only to be going up against these predators who are quite the opposite, it almost feels like you're waiting for Peter to say something about it. And I mean, it's a small thing, but I'm glad that we got it. But right here, when the 2 of them go rushing at Peter, he catches them both with a web yank, so now he knows it's 2 down in this fight and 1 to go. And that's when we see the 3 dots on his forehead again. Just before this switches to outside, where Jameson notices some stuff going on up there just before his office explodes, and he's nearly crushed by this huge webbed up object. just before he's tackled out of the way by Detective LaPearl, who then goes on to say to him, "Have you ever asked yourself, Mr. Jameson, why trouble seems to follow Peter Parker everywhere he goes?" But right now, Jonah's just like, "Detective LaPearl, that's my mother flood-pucking office that just got destroyed. I said it before, and I'll say it again. I'm surrounded by idiots, incompetents, and assassins." Cause you know, Jonah out here living that life. But as Detective LaPearl goes to check out this mysterious webbed up object, Jameson approaches it with her and he's like, "What is that thing?" And that's where one of these predators pop out and it comes for them. But we're gonna have to wait till issue 4 to see where this goes. And it's crazy because it's leaving us with a triple cliffhanger. Cause on one hand you got MJ, who's currently laying down in a pool of rats while having to stay quiet as a mouse to keep her thermals hidden. On the other hand, we got Peter with the 3 dots on his head just before the explosion. Then you got Jameson and Detective LaPearl up close and personal with one of the predators from the hunting party, who I'm surprised doesn't need a backiotomy because that was a long fall. Like, I'm legit surprised he ain't come out the bag like, "Oh, when I came down." Like, this one is a trooper. And as far as Kraven, who we saw heading down into the subway, I'm not really counting him as a cliffhanger because he's either gonna pop up with MJ or the time thing will get shifted around before we see where he's really at. Nonetheless, I'm digging where this is going and I already know the next issue is gonna be crazy. Alright, so jumping back in, the first thing we see is a manhole cover pop up with a bunch of rats just spewing out of this thing. And you guys already know from the last issue what this is all about. Cause next when we see MJ, who's the one opening this cover while helping the girl she met at the subway, with the both of them covered in rats and all kind of bites and scratches, this lets us know that the whole situation with them hiding in a pool of rats to cover their heat signature, it worked well enough to give them a head start at getting away from the Skinner Predator, who is hot on their heels at this moment. But I gotta say, and some of you guys mentioned this when we talked about it last, because y'all were talking about how the girls were definitely gonna have some bites and scratches on them, at the least. And for me, now with seeing this, I'm just like, man, when this is all over, these girls gotta go out for some shots. And I ain't talking about at no bar either. Cause there ain't no telling what them rats done passed on to them. But even with them getting out of the sewer, the girl that's with MJ, she tells her, "I can hear that thing coming," only for the Skinner Predator to come out right behind them. And it's even still playing the voice mimic that says, "Help me, help me." But also we're told here, this Yautja delights in the skins of its prey. It does not hunt for honor, it hunts for fear. Which just reminds us that this guy's not gonna leave someone alone because they're unarmed. This thing delights in killing anything, no exceptions. But fortunately for MJ and the other girl, before the Skinner Predator can get to them, there's an explosion nearby, which was the one from the last issue, that gets this guy's attention. And then it says here, Skinner is an outlier among the Yautja, despised, targeted. He knows how to protect himself, and he can smell the plasma burner of a ship nearby, which is basically it's saying because of this explosion, the Skinner Predator now knows where the hunting party's at that's coming after him, as well as their ship. So the Skinner immediately heads out that way, because when it comes to protecting itself, it has to do something about them rather than just wait for the party to find him. So for that reason, this dude makes a beeline for the Daily Bugle, which is where the explosion came from, which for a very brief moment gives MJ and this other girl a bit of relief, until another hand comes up from the sewer grabbing MJ's leg. With this now being Kraven, who is hunting down the Predator and demanding for MJ to tell him where he went, which as we know is back towards the Bugle. And speaking of the Bugle, like we saw before, just outside we got Detective LaPearl and J. Jonah Jameson being attacked by a Predator from the hunting party who had just taken a nasty fall from Jonah's office all the way down here. But when the detective tries to defend herself and Jonah by drawing a gun, this Predator just smacks it out of her hand and it just tosses her. So Jonah goes in to help and he gets the same treatment. And really for the two of them, even though they don't know what they're fighting right now, like they've been trying to process that this whole time, what they do know without a doubt is that it's connected to these recent killings in some way or form. But as this Predator is basically just juggling J. Jonah and Detective LaPearl, this dude is impaled from behind, as we're given more information that basically responds to J. Jonah Jameson and Detective LaPearl's assumption of this guy being connected to the murders, with it saying they are right and they are wrong. The true monster has emerged. Skinner, the killer of prey and predator alike. Because again, this dude really don't care. It's like Hannibal Lecter or Leatherface, but from another planet. But right after this, when we head back up into the building at the Daily Bugle, if you guys remember in the last issue, we got a bit of a cliffhanger because one of the last things we saw was Peter web a couple of these predators up just before another put a target right on his head. And that was like the last thing we saw before the big boom, which sent one of the webbed up predators out the window, but inside, the predator who spotted Peter missed thanks to Peter's spider sense, and now he's chasing him through the Bugle with the shoulder cannon, which kind of reminds me me of the old song with the sample and the cannon. Dun, 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 dun. But either way, I digress. But nonetheless, this Predator's just airing out the Daily Bugle with his plasma caster. But also there's this moment here as Peter's being chased where he's like, you guys, I've already got a stacked rogues gallery. I don't need a bunch of horseshoe, crab-headed space weirdos suddenly deciding New York will be a fun place to destroy. Maybe you can make trouble elsewhere, like Jersey. And now it's like, man, both the Godzilla story and now Predator, why are the Human Torch and Spider-Man throwing shade at Jersey? But funny enough, it's also in this moment where Peter catches a plasma caster blast right to the chest that sends him flying out of the building. And at this point just above, the Skinner Predator's made his way up top to the roof of the Bugle where the hunting party's ship's at. And it says here, Skinner knows his best chance of survival isn't an assault on the Yautja, it's to return to the shadows. If he destroys the ship, they will be trapped here with him in this dark, hot maze of a city he knows too well. So he is focused on them. He fails to realize there's another hunter stalking him. Cause now Kraven's made his way up here and he's not playing around. Cause this fight is visceral from the jump. They're stabbing and slicing each other almost as if these two are playing a game called Who Can Keep the Most Blood in Their System. Cause I'm telling you, for a minute, it looks like the both of them are about to have a tie for last place. Cause they're both stabbing and carving each other up like crazy. But eventually this leads to Kraven coming out on top with him taking the Skinner's head clean off. And I mean, maybe not that clean, but you know what I mean. And when Kraven does this, he lets out this primal cry of victory. But after that cry is finished, he then hears another sound, which of course is the countdown to the self-destructing device that's capable of taking out half the city. And so now when Spider-Man shows up with a few broken ribs and his left ear ringing after getting boomed with that plasma caster, we find out that Peter was led up here by a spider sense. So when he sees the device and he hears the noise it's making, he points to it and he asks Kraven, is that what I think it is? And Kraven just responds saying it is, death to us all. So that's where Peter tells him to cut it off now. And as Kraven does, he lets him know it may only have seconds left. So Peter webs it up and he gets out of there. And we're told through all this, under normal circumstances, Kraven and Spider-Man are mortal enemies. But these are not normal circumstances. Spider-Man knows it will not be enough, but he wraps the bomb in spider silk to muffle it. And you can see as he's racing to get away from the city, MJ's down below calling for him by his government name, mind you. But it goes on to say, he doesn't hear her, but the thought of MJ is always with him. And as the hand starts glowing, it says he would sacrifice himself for the city, but he would die 1,000,000 times over for her. And at this point, with Peter managing to get out just far enough to drop this countdown device and make his way back, even still, the explosion is insanely huge and extremely bright. And I mean, even to the point where it's nearly blinding Kraven all the way back at the Bugle. And while he's watching, he gives a little speech in Spider-Man's honor where he's like, I've always imagined my blade would end Spider-Man, but that was a worthy death. And I mean, I'm sure Peter would have loved to have heard such kind words. Like, he should put that on the card. But then out of nowhere, Kraven suddenly realizes that he's not alone up here, just before he's attacked by a predator from the hunting party. And he couldn't be happier because now he's like, oh, there's more. Good. And I mean, he probably would be happier if he wasn't all carved up with his own blood everywhere, because man, he's looking bad. But at the same time, Kraven is the type who would like that kind of thing. Because even now, Kraven's like, come and get it. Let's taste each other's blood. But this time around, this predator gets the upper hand on him. But it doesn't even matter to Kraven, because he's like, if I'm gonna die, then let me die like this, at the hands of a great hunter. And I'll even say, seeing this predator catch Kraven, it makes sense, because the Skinner predator was mad skinny, while this one is completely jacked, as well as a true hunter through and through. But back down on the ground with J. Jonah Jameson and Detective LaPearl, we see the two of them individually trying to piece together how they're going to tell this to others, only to realize they're not walking away with this with much. Because for Jameson, this is like the headline that no one will ever believe. While for the detective, she's not worried about a headline, but for her is more so the police report on the serial killer, who was 8 foot tall and also wanted by an interstellar hit squad. And for a moment, they look at each other like, okay, we got no photos, we got no footage. People are going to think we're crazy. And that's when they hear a scaring sound nearby, only to discover that the hunting predator from earlier, you know, the one who was kebabbed by the Skinner, he's still alive. So they approach very cautiously, only to hear a voice from behind them say, guns down, hands up, step away from the specimen. With this voice coming from none other than Abraham Cornelius, who's most likely with Weapon X at this point. So it's likely he's already met Professor Andre Thornton, and now they're about to take this predator and give him adamantium everything. Which I gotta admit, sounds like a great pitch for Predator Kills the Marvel Universe, which is also written by Benjamin Percy. So hey, Who knows? Because really, even with this being the ending of Predator vs. Spider-Man, Percy's setting up a lot of things in this universe that are just begging for a continuation. And I'm talking about from all the Marvel Predator verses that he's put out, because all of Percy's stories are coming together soon. And this one's adding a lot of good pieces to the big picture, especially here towards the very end when we jump around a bit. Because at one point we jump back to MJ, which is how we find out that Peter is still alive, and to wrap things up with Kraven, with him killing the Skinner and standing up to the hunting party. These Predators take the Skinner's body and its head, and the one who Kraven was fighting, he spares him. And it doesn't look to be that way at first, because when this Predator takes off his helmet and draws his blade, Kraven's like, oh, it's time. Like, at least he's gonna get an honorable death. But that's not even what this is, because instead, he's basically doing a blood ritual for Kraven. Which for the Yautja, this is how they separate the boys from the men, so to speak. Because after the young Yautja kill their first xenomorph, and I imagine there's other cases where if you kill a bad blood, you can be blooded as well. But after one is blooded, as long as you stick to the Yautja code, you get access to better weapons, body augmentations, and so on. But also while this is happening, it says here, his forehead burns as the Yautja makes a mark on him. The mark left at crime scenes that span the globe and the century. The mark of Skinner. Kraven hasn't just been spared, he has been branded as the ultimate killer, a bloodied warrior. And as the Predator that marked him goes back to the ship, it uses its vocal mimicking device to play the words, "A great hunter, come and get it." So of course Kraven goes running on that ship like a little kid. Like, you don't have to tell me twice. And when the ship leaves, MJ and Peter, they see it go, and MJ's like, they're gone, we're safe. But Peter has his suspicions that it's not quite over just yet. And I mean, to be honest, I have the lingering suspicion that Peter's right. Because who wouldn't want to see Weapon X Predator, as well as Kraven with all of his Yautja upgrades? And also with us being told that the story will continue in Predator Kills the Marvel Universe, issue 1, which again is also written by Benjamin Percy and dropping in August. This series is set to bring together everything we've seen, from Predator vs. Wolverine to Predator vs. Black Panther, as well as Predator vs. Spider-Man. And that's what it says on Marvel.com. I think they know what they're talking about, so I'm excited. But yeah, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to drop a like and let me know in the comments what you're looking forward to the most in Predator Kills the Marvel Universe. Because who knows, they might even drop Predator in Marvel Rivals. Okay, maybe that's a bit too much. And so now real quick, I want to give a special shout out to all the patrons. Thank you guys for all of your support. And for anyone who's new here, who wants more information on how to support the channel, I got a link below where you can go to patreon.com/DopeSpill. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and we'll do it again on the next one. Alright, later.